Hey, Boker Tov, good Erev Yom Kippur. Masim Tov to everybody, and Slicha Mechila. I offended anybody, which I certainly probably did during the course of the year or other times. So please be mochel me. Today's daf is Daf Tzadik in Ksubas, Daf Tzadik from the Mishnah, the first Mishnah, the top of the page, 3-4 lines from the top of the page. A child under the age, a boy under the age of 13 cannot get married, Torah, because he can't give kedushin. He's not a bar das. But let's say his father married him off. You know, they would marry them off young in those days. They didn't live that long. So they married him off young. It's not really a marriage. His father married him off, and their wedding and a ksuba and all that. Let's say now he's bar mitzvah. And he continues to stay with her. So the original ksuba that he wrote that they wrote for him that he was giving to his wife when he was a katan still stands. So again, katan sheisiu aviv ksubasa kayamas. Ksuba stands afterwards. Shalmanas kein kaima. That's why he kept her even after he's 13. There's a machlokas on Rishonim. Are you allowed to do that? Because if the father's setting him up, this young boy under the age of bar mitzvah, setting him up with a girl, and it's not really a marriage, that's like znus. It's not kedushin. There's no kedushin. You can't kedushin. A man who's bar mitzvah can marry a young girl via her father, right? Her father can give her off in kedushin from the time she's a baby. That's a kedushin d'oraisa because she doesn't have to be a das. Her father owns her until, let's say, till the age of 12 and a half. But a boy is not a marriage. Now, we've had before about Yibum. If his brother was married to a woman, then Reuben died with no children, right? And Reuben was 20 years old and he died with no children. So, and then there's a 10-year-old brother who can perform Yibum, can perform Bia, then it technically it's a marriage d'oraisa, but not because of the 10-year-old alone. It's because it came from a marriage d'oraisa. But here, this child, are you allowed to do that? So there's a machlokas whether you're allowed to do it. Some say you can't because it's a Bia znus. Some say it's not znus because it was really the shame kedushin just doing early. But one of the reasons you shouldn't do it is because takala can come out. Let's say the boy's 9, 10 years old, and the father marries him off. It's not really a marriage Torah, but people will think that it is. Or let's say now she accepts kedushin from somebody else, right? Like after she's bat mitzvah, let's assume, and she accepts a kedushin from somebody else. That's a good kedushin because this isn't a kedushin. Then you'll have a problem. Who's the right husband? Could have a mamzer, etc. So the rabbis don't like that. But let's say the father did it. He did it. The boy was 10 years old, married off, and said, okay, fine, they'll grow up together, as they say, right? And then after his bar mitzvah, the same ksuba stands. Shalmanas kein kaim. He doesn't have to give her another ksuba. Similarly, a ger shenas gaira ishto. A ger, he gave his wife a ksuba before they were magayer. Well, they were still goyim. And now they were magayer together. The original ksuba, ksubasa kayama shalmanas kein kaim. He continued to live with her on the condition that he's going to keep the first ksuba going. How much of the first ksuba? That's only the basic ksuba, right? Remember the 100 bula or 200 if she's a psula, right? The basic ksuba. Aval tosfos einla, but there's no additional amount. In other words, let's say he wrote a ksuba when he was 9 years old or when he was a goy. I'm going to give you $200 plus another $1 million. Doesn't get the other $1 million. Only gets the basic 200. Tosa says, so if that's the case, what's the chiddush over here? They only get the 200. Everybody gets 200, even if everybody gets 200, even if there's no ksuba written, right? That's what we learned yesterday. It's a tanai bezdin. It's an act of the court. The chiddush is that even though when the marriage really does take effect, halachically, when is that? After the guy is magayer, after they're magayer, or after the boy is 13, she's no longer psula at that point. She still gets 200 because when they first met, she was a psula. You understand? When they first had bia, they were first. So that's a chiddush over here. Okay, so Rav Huna says they only get 200. Tosus eilam. Rav Yehuda Amar afilu tosus yeshla. She even gets the additional amount. That's Rav Yehuda's amount. Rav Yehuda's opinion. Meisvei chitchu. It says over there. If let's say after he became bar mitzvah, or after the goy was megayer, he added more. Chitchu means he added more on. Katan shem mishigul v'gershes gayer imosifu klomar ksuba on the original one. No, tell us mashma chitchu, then you get the extra amount. Chitchu ain't no chitchu. Only if you added on more, it's mashma after he was bar mitzvah, or after the convert became a convert. Then you add more. But if you didn't add more, then he only gets the basic amount. No, ema af mashma chitchu. No, it means this doesn't mean that added on to the 200. I mean, even if there was tosefes before he was Megayer before the kid was bar mitzvah, there's more. And then they added more afterwards. You get that too. You get the original 200, you get the Tosfos that he gave when he was a Katan or when he was a Goy, and the Chitshu. But the Bryce doesn't say that. The Bryce says Chitshu, if he added more on after his bar mitzvah or after the Goy was Megayer, the Tos Masha Chitshu, low Chitshu. But if they weren't, Basula Masayim Mana Mana. Basically, you only get the same basic amount. That's all you get. So again, they got married when he was a Katan or he was a Goy. It wasn't a marriage d'oraisa, and he gave a ksuba. And now, when they got married, halachically later on, all you get is the 200. You don't get any more than that. If he added on more after his bar mitzvah, after then he can give whatever he wants. But any amount that he committed to before it was a real marriage d'oraisa is not valid. Only you get the basic 200. Shifted if you get a kash from Yehuda. So it's a problem with Rav Yehuda. How did Rav Yehuda understand? He's got this Bryce over here, which says if you didn't add more after he was a halachic marriage, you only get the basic amount. And as Rav Yehuda Mastis tested him, he was confused, made a mistake from the lashon of the Mishnah. Who savar ksubasa kayemes akula milsa? He thought when the Mishnah said ksubasa kayemes, that the same ksuba exists, he was going on the whole thing, not only the 200 that the kid or the guy had committed to. Let's say 200 plus another 1,000. So he committed to 12,000 to 1,200 altogether. So he thought that's what it means when the Mishnah says ksuba sakayemes akul milsakoy below it. Not true. Aiku ksuba koy. When the Mishnah says ksuba kayemes in both those cases, whether it's a goy or whether it's a kid whose original marriage is not a marriage minatorah because they were goyim and he was a kid. When it says all you commit to and when they stay married afterwards is the 200. The original ksuba doesn't really have any meaning. Ksuba kayama simply means that he's entitled to the basic amount of 200 or 100 that everybody gets, but no more than that unless he adds on more afterwards. Hanach kosevish. Now we begin the 10th parak. Now let's understand something. Let's go back to understand what the basic idea of this parak that we're going to talk about. When a man gets married, he gives a ksuba. Basic ksuba is $200, right, to a psula, right? Now, if she has other property that she brings into the marriage, nichsei malug, it's not written to the ksuba. He can use it, he can eat from it, he can get the produce, but he's not responsible for it. If she writes, if they write into the ksuba, you're going to get this and this land is coming with her that belongs to her family, and he's responsible for it. And if it goes down in value, he has to make up. That's all written into ksuba. We call it nichsei sam barzel. Then there's another thing. Besides in the ksuba's mulug, mulug is not in the ksuba. Besides the basic ksuba and nichsei sam barzel, there's another thing called ksuba's bin indifferent. Remember we said this. What do we know? If a man dies, who gets his yerusha? His sons, basically, right? First his sons, no sons, his daughters, but not his wife. If a wife dies, who gets the yerusha? The husband. So here's the problem. The rabbis wanted to tell the father-in-law, the girl's father, help them out with a nice dowry, buy them a house in Israel, buy them something, right? But he says, listen, they get married, I give them a house, I give them $1 million. Then what happens, God forbid, she dies in childbirth or something happens to her. Who gets the money? He gets it. Then he gets married to some other girl, of course, right? And they have children. And let's say there's 10 boys. Let's say each wife had 5 children, 5 boys and 5 boys, right? Let's say each had 10 kids. All 10 children, including the other wife, are going to share in his $1 million house that he gave. He doesn't want that. So he writes what's called the Ksubas Ben Dichron. He says, listen, I'll put more money in, but who's going to get it? In case, listen carefully, in case his daughter dies first, right? Which means the husband inherits her. Then when the husband dies later on, the house will go to his deceased daughter, children, not the other children that he has from other wives. Okay, that's the idea of Ksubas Nichron. However, it's written in the form of Yerusha. It's not a gift. In other words, what happens? The children don't get it when the wife dies, when their mother dies, right? When his daughter, the father-in-law's daughter dies. No, when the wife dies, the husband gets the Yerusha. When the husband later on dies and you divide up his whole estate, well, the part that this first father-in-law gave goes to his kids, not to the other ones, before they divide up the rest of his estate. So number one, to understand that that's called Ksubas Ben Dichron, but it's really given as a Yerusha. When the husband dies, then the sons that that he has from the first wife, we'll call her the first one, number one, number two, the first wife from number one, they get that part over and above the regular Yerusha. The husband may have made him a fortune and some other stuff, right? But it's called the Yerusha, not a ksuba, right? A ksuba. What's the ksuba? The ksuba is what goes to the wife, right? When a husband dies, goes to the wife. That's the ksuba. That's not a Yerusha. That's a ksuba. That's an obligation. She's a creditor. She's entitled to her $200 plus whatever it is, plus the nefsek on barzal. But the ksuba's been indifferent. The extra $1 million that he gave, that goes to the father-in-law's grandchildren. But that when does it go? When the son-in-law dies, when they get a Yerusha, because it's called the Yerusha. The other point is this. Let's say there's two, right? The husband eventually takes another wife, right? One wife, two wives at the same time, and after the other, number one and number two. This idea of ksuas b'ndichen that the rabbis instituted is only if the wife dies first, the husband inherits her, and then when the husband dies, it goes down. Now, the husband dies, he might, in a normal case, let's say, or not normal case, where the rabbis took on, maybe number one, his wife number one died, and he inherited her. He took another wife, and wife number two died, and he inherited her. Now, when he dies, right, and he dies, number one's ksubas b'ndichen is going to go to her sons, and number two's ksubas b'ndichen is going to her sons, right? Number two's children. However, the rabbi said that special takana, right? It only works when the wife dies first, then it goes to the husband, and the husband dies, goes to the wife's children, first wife's children, second wife's children. But it only works then, and it only works if there's also a regular estate, because the rabbi said it's part of the Yerusha of the husband. So let's assume that the husband was a lo yitzlach, he didn't have any money, he didn't have a nickel. All he had at the time that he died was the house that number one's father gave and the number two's father gave. They each give us different. Then there's no ksubas b'ndichen, because they don't want to destroy the Yerusha D'Oraisa. Because Minat Torah, when the wives died, who gets it? The husband. When the husband dies, it goes to the children. That's the Torah. So if there's at least a dinner, there's at least $1, let's say, that they're going to split up as a regular Yerusha, they're going to take $1 and give 10 cents to each of the 10 boys, right? The number one had 5 boys, number two had 5 boys. Everybody gets 10 cents. Okay, then the whole thing applies. You first give out the $1 million house to each one, then you divide up the $1. But if there's no money there, then they don't say ksubas b'ndichen. Then whatever the estate is, the husband inherited X amount from number one, and when wife number one died, and X amount, a Y amount from number two, wife died. Then they just divide whatever sons he has at the end. If one had 5 or one had 7 or one had 3, doesn't make any difference. You divide it all up equally, even though it seems unfair, right? But that's the rule. Now, this is all when the wife died before the husband. If the husband died first, right, all she gets is her ksuba. She gets her ksuba, and the Yerusha goes to the children. And as the rabbi said, the whole idea of ksubas b'ndichen is that it's a Yerusha. They made it part of the Yerusha, and it only applies if there's still regular money in the estate. They get divided up. Now let's see the Mishnah. Mishnah is nasui shtei nashim. Mem is married to 2 wives, number 1 and number 2. This is a regular case. Number 1 and number 2. Mason, he died. Harishona kadam sashniya, v'yorsh rishona kadam sashniya. Now what happens? Man died. He had 2 wives. He married one first, one afterwards. Right? He died with 2 wives. So what happens when he dies? They get their ksuba. Let's say there's not enough money to go around. So the first one has a prior lien. She got married first. She got married in 1980. The other one got married in 1990. So now you pay 1980s off first before 1990. That goes simple, right? It's like if you have 2 creditors, who has first dibs? The guy who has an earlier lien. That case is simple. Yarsha Rishona comes Mishnah. So Yarsha Rishona means if, let's say, after the husband died and left the 2 wives, and now the wives died, so the Yorshim of the wives, the wives' children, could be your father, could be your kids, those Yorshim will inherit also in that order, because they're coming to collect the ksuba of their mother, right? There's a ksuba from 1980, a ksuba from 1990. The first, so you pay off the 1980 first, then you pay off the 1990, either to the wives or to their heirs. Okay, that part's simple. Nasas Rishon, now we get the ksubas b'ndichen. Nasas Rishon, he married number 1, Umeisa, and she died. Remember what happens when she died? Who gets the Yerusha? The husband, right? But there's ksubas b'ndichen. Nasas Shniya, now he took a second wife, number 2, Umeisu, and he died. Now listen carefully. He died. If he died before the wife, there's no ksubas b'ndichen. She just gets her ksuba. Umeisu shniya v'yorshea kodem l'yorsha rishona. Listen to this. Now the second one gets paid before the first one. What do we mean by that? The second one, who does he owe to? He owes a ksuba to number 2, right? Because he died before her. The ksuba is a regular obligation like an IOU. It's an IOU. That has to be paid off before the yorshim of the first wife get their ksubas ben dichron, because we explained before, the ksubas ben dichron that they get, the house that the father-in-law gave, that's a yerusha. What comes pays first, the yerusha or a ksuba? The ksuba comes first. If a man dies and he owed $1 million to people, he owed money all over the place, the yorshim have to pay that money. If there's something that's property backing it up and all that, the yorshim have to pay that money. What about the yerusha? So yerusha comes afterwards. Sure, they get the money, they have to give it to, they have to pay off the loan. And just like you have to pay the creditors, you have to pay the wife off first. So over here in this case, when the man died, he left a wife. She has to get paid first. If there's anything left, then it goes to the ksubas, then it goes to the first ones, because the first wife died. She predeceased her husband. So what do her kids get? Her kids are coming with the claim of ksubas ben dichron once the father, because the father died, so they want to get ksubas ben dichron, but they first have to pay off the ksuba of the second wife, even though she was the second, because she's paying the ksuba there, the basic ksuba. That's an IOU. They have to pay off that debt before they get the yerusha. And as we said, ksubas ben dichron, even it's called ksubas ben dichron, but the rabbis made it like a yerusha, and therefore it only gets paid after the ksuba. Now, first he goes through in the first case. In the first case, a man died with two wives. We said the first one gets paid before the second one, obviously, right? One was married 19, and one was married. Midiktani Rishona comes as she, since you say that the first one is before the first one. Veloktani Rishona, Yeshla Bashnia Aimla. Why don't you just say if there's only enough money for one, you just said the first one gets and the second one doesn't get, period. If the second wife who got married in 1990, let's say she grabbed her ksuba first, we don't take it away from her. In other words, when you have two creditors, and the second creditor with the later lien grabs it ahead of the first one, what's the rule there? So there's a shaila about that. A later balchov who had a later lien, shekar begava, and he grabbed it first, gava, masha gava gava. What his take is take, because it says over here the first one comes before the second ones, but it didn't say if only the first one gets and the second one absolutely doesn't get. He didn't say it definitively like that. So it's mashma that the second one grabbed it first. It's okay. So it's no. It's not true. If the one from 1990 grabbed her ksuba before the one from 1980, she can't keep it. She has to give it back. What does it mean that the first one comes first? Not just she comes first, but if the other one grabbed it, it's okay. Legamri, Tani, means entirely. The first one is first, and the second one, if she grabbed it, is not entirely. Kenetan ben karmavas. When we say when the Yerusha man dies and he left the son and a daughter, who gets the Yerusha man Torah? The son, ben karmavas. Well, does that mean he comes first, but if she grabbed it, she gets to keep it? No, she can't keep it. So here also, it means that it means the first one gets it and the second one cannot grab it. Some say you could learn that the Havman will say the other way around. Middle of Taniyim Kadna Shnia V'Tafsa, since it doesn't say that if the second one grabbed it, we don't let her keep it. We let her keep it. We don't take it away from her. Since it doesn't say that we don't take it away from its mashma, if the second one grabbed it, we do take it away from her. See from over here that if a later creditor grabs something first, what he took, he can't keep. It's mashma by, because it says over here, it doesn't say we don't take it away from her. It says mashma that if the second one grabbed it, we do take it away from you. The says, no, you can't prove that either. It could be that the second creditor, the one with the later creditor, in this case, the second wife who got married in 1990, maybe if she grabbed it, she could. But I did ton shni of Yoshua, since the safe of the Mishnah, in the case of the Ksubas ben Dichron, where the second wife died after the husband, and the first wife died before the husband died. So since it's over there, it says shni of Yoshua, and that's definite because the second wife is getting the Ksuba, and the first wife's kids are getting only Ksubas ben Dichron, and there it's definite. So Tananami, and the Reish also says, we shown a Kodemus Lashniya. It could very well mean that it says, but it could very well be that if the second one grabbed it, maybe she could keep it. Right? Maybe the second one grabbed it. And so you can't tell from our Mishnah if man died, he had two wives. One he married in 1980, one in 1990. So the first one has a prior lien. What happens if the second one grabbed it? You can't prove it from our Mishnah. It can go either way. So on the second case, though, the complicated case, what's the second case? Again, now he married number one. Number one died before he died. So therefore, the husband inherited her. And now he took a second wife. And when he took a second wife, he died before she died. So the second wife is getting her ksuba, right? That's what her or her children, if she dies subsequently. And the first wife who died before the husband died, her kids are getting the ksubas mendich, which is a yerusha. So they have to pay her off first. They have to pay the ksuba first. Thus, if you see three things from this Mishnah. Number one, there's a question where we said that the simple case I gave before, a man has two wives. They each brought money, and the father, there was been different in both cases. One father gave $1 million, one gave $2 million as a kuzbin maybe once their grandchildren yet, and both wives died, and the husband inherited both. Then when the husband dies, so the first one's wife gets the 1 million, and the second one's kids get the 2 million. If there's some left over in the estate for them to divide up equally, assuming there's no before. Then maybe that's only when both wives predeceased the husband. But when one wife predeceased the husband, like in our case, and one died after the husband, maybe you don't say that she survived the husband. Maybe you don't say that because all she's going to get is ksuba, and the other one's going to get the ksuba indifferent, and it's going to be all fight. So you see over here, no, you do say it. One died in his lifetime. The first wife died in his life. And one after he died. Right? Yeah, there is ksuba indifferent. That's what you see from Mishnah. And you're not worried that there's going to be a fight. What do you mean? I'm only getting ksuba, you're getting ksuba indifferent? How do you know that? Because it says in this case, in this last case in the Mishnah, the second wife and her Yorshim get their ksuba before the first one gets the ksuba s'nirchan. They get it first. In other words, if there's only enough money to pay the ksuba, that's all there is to pay. They pay the ksuba of the second wife, but they come first. She gets first. But if there's more money there, shakli, then the children of the first wife do get the ksuba s'nirchan. So you see that. Number one, when achas b'chayev achas moso, there is ksubas different. That's what the Gemara wants to say. You see it from our Mishnah.
Where does it come from?
What?
Where does it come from? In other words, there's property
from his assets, right? From the assets, from karka, from the chasim shibara, basically.
So the problem only really arises when there's only the only karka is vindictive.
Right. That could be, and it's basically karka, but ksubas vindictive, not so, because the ksubas vindictive is a yerusha. Yerusha gets everything, even metalton also. We'll talk about that.
No, I'm saying he has an estate.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And he has part of the estate is the vindictive, and part of the estate is the money he earned by himself.
Yeah.
Where does the ksuba come?
The ksuba all the money gets mixed up together because he owns all the money at that point. It's not like it's separate accounts. He owns all the money at that point because he inherited the wives. So it's really his money. You understand? Let's say, he loses it all. There's no money. You understand? It's not in a separate account. It's not sitting in an account. It's not in a trust account that he can't touch. He has the money because he inherits it.
The children of the first wife have to lose something.
Well, they're going to lose something if there's not enough money. If there's not enough money, they'll lose out.
But if there's enough money,
then everybody is saying that's very good. So that's the issue. When there's enough money, do they get it or not? Because it says over here they have to first pay off the second wife's ksuba. All right, so it says they have to pay that off. But if there's more money, they could get the ksuba different. But the concept is it could be that ksuba different is only if both of them died before. But we say the whole issue comes up. The whole issue comes up when there's other children involved, the husband and another wife. If he was the only wife, then what's the issue? They're the only children; they get everything. But when there's a second wife, maybe only say it when both wives predeceased the husband. But when one predeceased and one didn't, maybe you don't say that because there are going to be fights. In other words, how did the rabbis make the takana? So he said, now you're right. In terms of in general, Yerusha is Yorshim get everything. Real estate, metalton, they get everything. But a ksuba is like a bachov, is only what's meshubah them is only the karka. But that's not what we're dealing with over here. The issue is not metalton. We'll see later on there is an issue about that. But let's first see what the Gemara says here. So the first thing we see is that even if it's achas b'chayev achas moser, you still say ksubas mendich mishmamina ksuba nasas moser. Where's the extra dollar over here? Remember I said before, you only say ksubas mendich if there could be a yerusha d'oraisa that he has his own money. He left the dollar. Besides the millions that the two fathers-in-law gave, he had a dollar there which could be out of weekly. That didn't say anything over here. Well, over here, you know what? Even though there was no dollar, but the ksub itself is the dollar. Think about it. What's the ksub? The Yorshim, when he died, the Yorshim automatically get the money. Now they have to pay the ksuba off. Remember, you can pay it off right away, or maybe she'll stay in the house and they'll pay it off in 20 years, whatever, right? But the ksuba itself is Yerusha that they have to pay out, but that money is like the Moser. It's like an extra $1. So that's the Moser. It's like, it's like a Moser over and above the other money. In my middle of Tani Moser dinner. It didn't say anything. It was Moser dinner. It says the children have to pay that ksuba right away, and then the first wife's kids get the ksuba mindichrim. Didn't say anything about the Moser dinner. It's mashma. The ksuba itself is like the Moser dinner. Like Rashi says, there's no Moser dinner bigger than that because the obligation to pay the ksuba is on all the children from the Yerusha. So that's the Yerusha. This one's different. Low tough from Shvadi. That they cannot take from Shvadi. Listen carefully. Maybe this is what you were getting at, Michael. They cannot seize it from the Chasim Mishubadim. It's only the Chasim Mishubadim means that it's Mishubad. It's not we say because a ksuba, since it's a Yerusha, you really get cash or this, but you can't grab it from the Shubbat. Let's say he sold the property to somebody else, they can't collect from there. Why? How do you see it? If you could say the Ksubs and Dichen, they could also get from the Chasim Shabbatim, the first children, what do we say? The children from the first wife, they first have to pay off the Ksuba. Fine, let them come now. After they pay off the Ksuba, which was Meshubat, right? The husband's assets were Meshubat first to the Ksuba, all his assets were Meshubat to the Ksuba. After they paid him off, let him now go and repossess it afterwards because they can collect from him. In other words, first they pay off the second wife. Then after they pay off the second wife or her children, let them go grab it. Says, okay, we're going to collect our Yerusha from the Chasim Shabbatim. So you see, you can't do this. So you see three things over here. The third thing is uncontested. But now we're going to ask on the first two things. Maskala, Rashi, Mimai, how do you know that in this case, a case of that achas b'chai v'achas moso yeshim siba, my dimlo memucha achas b'chai v'achas moso. If one wife died, number one died predeceased husband, and the other one survived the husband, right? Maybe eilam ksubas, maybe there's no umay kodman lenachla. When we say over here kodman, it means that you know what the children have to first pay off Yorsha kodman liyorsha rishona. Right? She comes before coming in terms of dividing up the Yerusha afterwards. Now, if you don't say ksubas ben different applies when one when one died before the husband, one died after the husband, you don't say, so what happens? They pay off the ksuba, right? You first pay off the ksuba, the money pay off the ksuba. Then if there's anything left over, they all divide it equally. In other words, if you don't say ksubas, you don't say, oh, the children of number one get their share, and children number two get their share from their grandfather. No, you don't say that. Divide up everything equally. And what is kodem nacha? If they're dividing up the nachla, what are you talking about? Yorsha Rishona. Just say that they divided up equally. The Yorshim, not of the first wife, just say all the Yorshim divide up equally. Lamali. Why did you say Yorsha Rishona? It sounds like they're inheriting the mother, right? They're inheriting the mother. No. I did Tana Shnia, the Yorsha. Since he talked about Shnia and Yorsha collecting the Ksuba, Tanam Yorsha Rishona. That's why he says Yorsha Rishona. But it's Avdaf the Yorsha Rishona. Rashi says, right, you don't, it's not Yorsha Rishona. Let me correlate Yorsha Rishona. Hello, Lomi Koch, they're not coming from her, they're coming from the Arshinim, the father, if it means that. So maybe it doesn't mean it. Maybe Bachlal is not talking about the Ksubas. Remember, the Mishnah didn't mention the word Ksubas bin Dichrin, right? We're explaining it. But maybe it just means they get the regular Yerusha. So I'm Yorsha Rishona. Uda Kamad, what about Ksubas Nasa Moser? You said the Ksubas, remember, you have to have at least one dinner of the regular estate, otherwise Ksubas different, right? How do you know that? So it says over here from the Mishnah, because it applies that the ksuba is like the extra $1, right? You're paying off that. That's part of what the Yerushim have to pay. It's part of the estate. So there is an estate there. Who says, maybe the ksuba is not moser. Ksuba does not take the effect of an extra $1 of the estate that's left there. It's not like that could be an extra part of the estate over the other estates have been indifferent. Maybe over here, maybe there was an extra $1. In other words, how do you say? You say over here that the ksuba, since we say the ksuba from different only applies when there's an extra $1 that they can divide up, so there's a Yerusha D'Oraisa, because otherwise there's no Yerusha D'Oraisa. Remember, if everybody just gets what their grandfather put in and there's no Yerusha, so you're uprooting the rules of Yerusha, because the Yerusha Ben Torah says that when the wife dies, the husband gets it. When the husband dies, all the children get it equally, except for the Bechor. All the sons get it equally, except for the Bechor. So you don't want to destroy that. Oh, that only works if there's a dinner. And here you didn't mention anything about the dinner, so maybe you see that the ksub itself is like the Moser dinner. It says no, maybe there was a Moser dinner, you just didn't mention it. Moser dinner. this business that you want to say, now the Gemara goes on. So the first two conclusions, we said Shema Min Atlas, the first ones are sort of disproved. The third one's remains. But this whole question of Achas B'chai V'Achas Moso, do you say Psuvas and different there or not, is actually Machlok Svam. The Tanya, Mesu, Achas B'chayav, the first wife, number one, died while the husband was alive. Achas Moso, and one died afterwards, like we said in our mission, the second case. The children of the number one could tell number two, they could tell number two, Atem, Atem, B'nei Ba'alschav, we owe you money, right? You're collecting your mother's ksuba, right? Because she died after her husband died, right? Atem, that's it. Rashi explains there's no extra money over here. Just take your money and go. Take your money and go, and we're going to keep the ksubas ben different. You get your ksuba and that's it, and we're leaving. Rabbi Kiva says no. Rabbi Kiva says no, it's gone. The whole thing is gone. The nachla from the first one is gone. The ksubas ben different. In other words, they divide up everything equally if there's anything left over. My love, horrifically. The Tanna Kama says, yeah, there is ksubas different because the children of the first wife of number one could say, look, you take your ksub and get out of here. We're going to take our ksubas ben different. So there's no ksubas different. Maybe see the machlok is there too. Amar no. I found the Rabban in the yeshiva, the Asvi, we're sitting and learning. Said the Kuliyama, everybody holds it that Achas B'chai Moso, there is ksubas different. That's number one. After you pay off the ksub of number two, number one can get the ksubas different, even though number two don't get it. They don't get it. That's what seems unfair over here, right? The number two people only get what? The ksubah of their mother, or if the mother's alive, she'll get it. And number ones gets ksubas different. Why? Because the ksubas different is only said when the mother dies before the husband, for her husband, right? So says maybe they do agree. They do get ksubas different. Maybe here's a question. Because the ksubah, remember, you only say ksubas different when there's a moser, when there's an extra dollar. And is the ksuba like the extra dollar? Yes. Also for a balchov. If the yorshim have to pay a balchov, that's also like an estate because they have to pay from the estate committee. Marsa ksubas nasa moser lechaverta. Tanakama says ksubas moser lechaverta within the balchov, and therefore, since there is a extra dollar over here by paying off the ksuba, the children of number one would get the ksubas ben different. Umar savar. And the number two, Rabbi Kiva, was it Rabbi Kiva? No, it's just it's no Bananas and who? Yeah, it's Rabbi Kiva. Bananas say get it, and then Rabbi Kiva says no. Rabbi Kiva says no, there is no moser. Even if there's no within the balchov, the fact that they owe the ksuba or the fact that they owe the balchov, that's not part of the Yerusha. That's not what we mean when we say you have to have a moser dinner. And there's no moser dinner. There's no if there's no moser dinner to divide up after you paid off the ksuba, or after you paid off the debt, the creditors, then there's no ksubas ben different, and therefore, but they both hold of achas b'chai, achas moso. There is ksubas different. And he said to them, he's quoting Rabbah said this, and I told them no, but b'chov kol yamalo pligi davi moser. Certainly, if you pay over b'chov, that's moser because they're getting Yerusha, and that is considered keep pligi b'ksuba. Machlok is by ksuba, but everybody holds that. Maskil below Rav Yosef. If you're saying that everybody holds of ksubas ben different words, achas b'chai v'achas moso. So Rabbi Kiva Omer kfar kofsa nachla. That lashon Rabbi Kiva says no. The first ones lose their ksubas ben different. The nachla already went to the second ones. Im yesh moser didn't be boiled. If the whole machlokus is the ksuba moser or not, so they should say if there's a moser dinner, there is ksubas ben different. If there's no ksubas dinner, there's no ksubas different. Why say it in that lashon of no? It's gone. That's the talk of the machlokus. The Rav Danas holds of it. And Rabbi Kiva says no. If one's most of it, when is ksubas ben different? Only when both wives predeceased the husband. But if one survived the husband, you don't say ksubas ben different at all. In this machlokas tanam, whether achas moso there is ksubas ben different or not, is like the following machlokas. The Tanya. Nosa, so Rishona, simple case, same case again. He married the first wife from Asa, and she died before the husband. Nosa Shni, then he married the second wife, Umes, and then he died, right? Umesu, Bon Banashozu, La'achar Misa, the children of Venotin Ksubas, even presumably that means the children of the second wife take their ksuba before the children of the first wife get ksubas ben different. Rav Shimon Omer, Im Yesh Moser dinner, if there's Moser dinner, then each one gets the ksubas the ksuba of their mother. Presumably the second one gets the ksuba, their ksuba, and the first one gets the ksuba, even meaning ksuba's been different. I think he means that. V'yim lav, if there's no moser dinner, v'yim lav chok mashava, you take the whole estate and you divide it up equally. My love, bakam ifmi. The mar savach b'chai v'chas moso, yeshim ksuba's been different. There is who said that would be Rav Shimon. Mar savach b'chai v'chas moso, amon ksuba's been different, right? Because it says over here, right? They take the ksuba of their mother, right? Rashi says 2 lines from the bottom page of Bnei Shniakoi. Bachgomer, born Bnei Shia, she Balatschov, and other ksuba semen. Aval the Bnei Mishona, ain't ksuba the ksuba achs b'chai. So Aman. In other words, right? Born Bnei Shazu, that's the Tanakama, right? Born Bnei Shazu lachem isav nothing ksuba semen. The first Tana holds what? That they get the ksuba, and that's it. There's no ksuba spin different. Shimon says no. That if there's a moser dinner, there is ksuba spin different. There is Muslim. That would be Rav Shimon. That's what we're assuming right now. Ksuba different. That would be the Tanakama. It says low. You can't say. Yeah, we did say before that the machlokes bananas from Bekiva is if achas b'chayev achas b'moso. But over here, you can't prove it from this case of the Tanakam Rav Shimon, because everybody could hold the achas b'chayev achas b'moso. There is ksuba spin different. Everybody can hold to that. There is ksuba spin. Here's the question: does that dinner that we say you have to have a dinner of the estate for the ksuba spin different to take effect? Does that have to be in karka or not? Marsav makarka ain't the taflo low. Right? Ibein and how Rashi says even Moshe Sheisham Sheiksubas the dinner Makarka. Does that mean from the Karka? Like a Moshe Dinel Metalpin. We should walk with Hanakama this and the first ones don't get any share because it was only Metalpin. Umar Savra feel Metalpin. Shimon says no, that there is, even if the dinner is from Metalpin, that's also good enough. That's the machlokus over here. But everybody holds so there is Ksubas different. Tomorrow's Gemara is going to pask in that case. In a few lines for us. So this sugi is really not finished. Because at this point, we're saying, like Rashi said, that the Havamina is that we're assuming now in the Havamina that Rav Shimon says what he says. We're assuming that right now that he says there is din different if there's a dinner at all, and the Tanakama doesn't hold to that, right? Because he says over here, that we're assuming we're talking about the second one. The second one's takes, according to the Tanakam, the second one gets the ksuba and the first one gets nothing. According to Rav Shimon, there is ksuba as long as there's a dinner, even metalpin. But the Gemara is going to disprove that. The Gemara is going to come out that we're switching around the shittas. This isn't the final answer, but we do see over here the Gemara is going to pass tomorrow. There is ksuba different, meaning even if one died before the husband, one died after the husband, then and like the Mishnah's mashma that the second one gets only the ksuba. Only regular ksuba because she died after the husband, so the husband never inherited her. But the first one, where the husband inherited the wife, when the husband then later on dies, her children do get the ksuba spin different, and we'll see, and we'll pass that. Where do we say this in ksuba spin different? Where do we say this in davening? Ksuba spin different. Bruch Shmei. Look in Bruch Shmei. It's in parentheses near the end of Bruch Shmei that we say whenever we take out the separate term, says that the Havilan I should have benin different of Yosef, and I should be zochet to have benin different male sons who fulfill the Torah. Right? This Agmar Simatova to everybody. Tomorrow's daf, right from this point, from me Matzah Summer is on the podcast, and we'll pick it up Mir Hashem on Thursday morning from the bottom of Yom Kippur's daf. The last 3 lines on the page, and I'm at base Amar Rami Racham. We'll pick it up from there. Mir Hashem at 5:20, the usual time. Everybody. Thanks so much. Thank you.